Welcome back to the Patient Magnet Podcast. My name is Jared Rohr. I'm the owner and founder of Aesthetic Conversion. And on the Patient Magnet Podcast, our goal is to teach you how to attract more people into your clinic, how to sell them, and how to deliver services excellently so that you can scale smoothly. And today I'm joined by a longtime friend. My guest today is somebody that has honestly helped me build a ton of my career. I like to think of him, and he hates when I describe him like this, I like to think of him as the secret puppeteer behind the entire aesthetics industry, just pulling the strings. He's been extremely high level at a ton of companies and has influenced the growth of Galderma. He's influenced the growth of Revision. He's influenced the growth of Platinum Dermatology, of tons of large, massive organizations across the States. And he's kind of done it as kind of the guy that you want to know kind of a thing, and he's been behind the scenes, and he's launched his own company recently, Chris Murray. And he has a sterling record of helping people scale, helping large corporations scale, and giving advice to clinics to get bigger and badder. And I feel like, Chris, you probably suffer from something that I realized recently I suffer from. I don't say this to be arrogant, but in my entire career, I've always been right. That's why I needed to go to business for myself, because I'll suggest something to somebody in business. They won't do it. And then 8 months later, invariably, they will do it and think it was their idea. And then, and I just got so sick of it that I was like, I have to be my own business owner. I feel like that's mostly your story as well, where at some point it's like, you got to step out, right?
Man, what a way to start. I didn't expect that. And because it plays to, I've actually had that experience where someone coached me to do that. So Galderma back in the days, we'll get to the back in the days, I'm sure all throughout this, but back in the days, they would send you to leadership school before you could manage teams of 8 to 10 people, which, was at the time, that was what you had. You had to go through a series of tests. You had to go through a series of leadership courses. Now, I had come out of the service, so I was a little bit older at the time, and I had already done some of that stuff. So I had an advantage for sure. But I went through this class in Virginia, and the instructor told me at the end, she said, "You should trust yourself." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" She's like, "You should trust yourself. You make decisions really quickly, and they're the right ones. You seem to hesitate when you see the rest of the crowd. They observe you, right? It's literally like behind glass doors, so that when you have to fire somebody, for example, or you're interviewing people, and you do all these tests in front of people while they watch you." And she said, "You should trust yourself. You have great instincts." And I swear I've lived by that, and I've referenced that now. I think my head is so big sometimes I can't fit through the door if you say that too much. I'm
Yeah.
I don't want to get a big head with that, but I really do have a good idea and a good eye for seeing things and recognize them as good and bad and special. So I do think trusting your instincts and kind of your gut, you're usually right. You usually are.
I always say I may be wrong, but I'm never in doubt. I'm just gonna go full force, baby. I might be wrong, but I'm never in doubt.
I don't have a medium speed. I either go yes or no, and then it can be disastrous if it was the wrong yes. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm really grateful, Chris, that you're here. I'm really excited for you that you've launched Catalyst Aesthetic Advisors. I think this is something I've been just hoping for you for a long time. For years, we've talked about you doing your own thing. And so I'm fired up that this is live, and excited for everybody else to get to reap the benefits and the blessing. I just have the fortunate privilege of kind of being behind some of those closed doors that you have led, and now everyone gets to potentially have access to you, which is killer. And
That's
it's a
the word
blessing
right there.
to them.
It's about access, right? Access is more valuable than money. And I learned that lesson if you ever go to the Masters. You can't buy your way in there. Those tickets aren't for sale, right? So no matter how much money at certain levels, like Berkman Place where the corporate people are, you can't buy access to that. And to your point, what I'm trying to do is exactly that. Give access to more of my friends and people that I don't know in the industry, to really help them do what I've been doing for, I would say, the better part of 15 to 20 years in this business. So yeah, access is the correct word. Access is more valuable.
Yeah, it's an amazing currency. Okay, so what I'd like to do, kind of during this, my goal for this episode, because you have this incredible rich history in medical aesthetics. I want to outline with you, maybe in the beginning. Let's outline what phases of business clinics might be going through, kind of the phase 1, 2, and 3, or the beginning, middle, and end, if you will, whatever, of what that looks like. And then what I'd like to pick your brain on is just, what does it look like for somebody to go from that startup phase into that second phase, and from that second phase into that kind of final stage where they're considering selling. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think three categories we can probably stick them into, but would love to hear maybe your input there on the different seasons that businesses find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, any business is the same. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And I think watching for cycles and starting to understand where you are in the cycle will help you adjust your lens to any business. And so really the beginning, middle, and end for aesthetics, if you really think about medical aesthetics. Now, I want to be specific because this can go along a lot of different ways, but we're talking about non-insurance med spa, or even dermatology or plastic surgeons. I know actually of people who do no insurance for those as well, for cosmetics. So you look at that and you say, that's really what we're talking about. So you think of the beginning, middle, and end. And this is no disrespect, because the beginning takes a lot of time. The beginning, you might be in the beginning part of your phase where you're just growing at all costs for years, if not decades. It can happen like that. So the beginning for your business is usually to about $1 million of EBITDA in a year. And just to be clear, that is usually something that's including paying yourself. So if you're the practice owner, this is including your payout. In addition to that, the EBITDA, if you're at about $1 million in EBITDA, that is a good metric to say you are basically in survival mode up to that. Does that make sense? So the beginning is usually $1 million EBITDA. I'd say the middle parts of things is when you start to add locations. So EBITDA is just one metric; it's just one measurement. But really, at the end of the day,
for anybody that's in that first phase, likely you might not even heard the phrase EBITDA, or you might have before. It stands for, correct me if I'm wrong, earnings before taxes, depreciations, and amortizations, I think. And it's more or less, you could think about it like a profit. You could think about it, what's left over after everything, basically. But EBITDA also factors in things like you bought a laser that depreciated or whatever. It factors in a handful of other things that just profit doesn't. Is that right, Chris? Am I
yeah, so it's interesting because I pretend a lot of times at the beginning of my finance induction into business, I pretended to know what it was, and you're exactly right. Think about it as what's left over after everything, including paying yourself, which you have to do. That's what we're here for. But it's actually a term that was invented in our lifetime. So I don't want to age myself, but during my decade of birth in the 70s, John Malone, who owns Liberty Media, started this term as a way to measure businesses. And before that, they were really looking at net income. The problem with net income, and Wall Street basically shifted to how they look at financials as well for this. Again, this guy invented this. So it's not just some made up term or some weird abbreviation. This is how he thought that taxes took too much of that. So this is just kind of removing that. So that's why EBITDA usually becomes, the measurement for your business's cash flow, which at the end of the day, that's what we're after, the cash flow. And that's really the advantage of being in med spas and aesthetics, is that you deal with cash flow. Considering, you think about dermatology, for example, they have an RCM process where they have to collect money from insurances that they might just decide to cut it by 3%. So there's a lot of risk in that, but there's also a lot of certainty in that. The good news is that in cash, you're measuring that at the end of the day. That's why I'm using it kind of to set the beginning. So from $1 million and below, that's where you'll be. When you get above that, usually you start adding locations. So if you're at about 1 to 3 locations and you can get up to about $3 million in EBITDA, that's really the middle. And the reason that that's the middle is you've now figured out how not to just do it by yourself. Just simply working harder will only get you so far. When you get above $1 million of EBITDA, you can't scale people. You simply can't make more of you. If you're special at what you do and you own the practice, how are you going to have 2 or 3 locations, 4 or 5 locations? You're not going to be able to go to all of them and maintain them. So what you need to do, start to get those processes really. So that's in the middle. The end isn't death. I don't mean to sound like the end, but the end of the cycle is really, what do you want to do? Do you want to retire? Do you want to sell? Do you want to hand this down to your children? Do you have somebody? I remember one time a guy called me, was thinking about selling his practice because he didn't want his staff to have nowhere to go. He didn't have a successor. He didn't have another associate. Very famous plastic surgeon, very famous, and he ended up selling
That's
his
hard.
practice. And he
Well, yeah, but it's
literally
hard because
sold, yeah,
plastics are such revenue drivers too, where it's like I've consulted for plastics where I mean their med spa that they own is just in the dumps because they make however many millions and millions of dollars and they're floating all the expenses as the plastic down to their med spa, and it's tough for them to pass on their business,
right.
to an associate.
Right. And well, it's even more, think about the person that's buying that. If your plan is to go off and, be on the beach for a little bit and you're the main revenue driver, your business is just an empty building at the end of the day if you don't have a succession plan. So we'll get into that, but that's what you start to deal with at the exit. That's what you're looking at. You're saying, I'm over 5 locations, most likely. If you're at $3 million of EBITDA, you're at probably 5 locations or more. You start to, you should have I build from the exit back. Like my concept, my vision is so much further, and then I'm building backwards. So that's sort of anti-exit. But
I think there's something to that because I had a conversation. This is me talking shop about my business, but I had a conversation with this guy who he used to work for a PE firm that would buy marketing agencies.
Yeah.
And something clicked in my brain where I said, "Hey, if I wanted to sell my business for $50 million as a PE firm, what would you need?" And he was like, "Well, you need 20 million in revenue and probably 5 in EBITDA, and you'd be able to probably sell that thing for $50 million." And
that's
then
a funny
I was
equation, right? If you think about what you just said. Now the other thing that you have to remember, and this is the key when you're talking to private equity guys, is that if they give you $1, they expect 5 back every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So if they pay, let's say your 50 million that you just threw out there for your marketing firm as the example is $1, they want 5 times that back. So you have to build what is your pipeline to that number. You have to have that before they'll even talk to you because they're just buying the business as it is. That's not really that exciting. Like you're projecting where you're going. Like, well, I'll add 7. What am I going to get for my $50 million? Well, we'll take that money and invest in 7 other people and more systems and EMR, whatever. You start investing that to get to that 5 times. So you really not only have to think about your existing revenue, to your point, 20 million or 5 in EBITDA, that's nice. It's more about what are you getting? Where's that $5 coming from? And if you stick to that rule, the bankers and private equity will love you because that's
killer. Yeah, there's something to that where you can select your exit. So say yes, this is where I would be open to selling the whole thing, or I'd be open to moving on to whatever's next. This is the goalpost we're shooting for. And then I think to your point too, if that's the exit, okay, what's the plan for after that so that we can actually get that exit done? And then you can just build from there. Because then when I talked to him about it, I was like, okay, great. So what do the next handful of years look like if I want to scale up to that 20 million point? He goes, well, you got to do this, then you got to do this. And he just laid out a plan for me to get to that point in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years where you could realistically make that sale. So same deal with everybody that's watching this is when you have no defined outcome of what you're shooting for. If you have no goal, you're going to hit it. You know what I mean? If you shoot for nothing, you're going to hit it.
Yeah. I mean, I work the opposite way. And I think, again, when you're dealing with the private equity world, like even just finance or just in general, if you start from the end and work backwards, you build everything that way. And I think of a great example is if you're at a company, let's say you have 100 plus locations. If you go to buy another practice and they have 2 EMR systems, they're not going to want to buy you. And the reason is it's not make or break, but it's a really bad thing because they probably inherited 17 other systems that don't talk to each other. And so that's really important because operations like paying invoices and getting products on time, fixing all of those back end things so that systems talk to each other is very complicated. So building your business, if you're intending to sell, even if you're just starting out, if your intention is to sell, pick one EMR system and move forward with it. Just a free tip of things like you're not thinking of, like if someone comes in and you go to a meeting and they sell you on some other programs, how does your tech stack, does it work together? Right? Those are things that when someone buys you, they're already inherited many tech stacks, and it just complicates and muddies the water into what you're going to do after the sale. And that's the hard part. That's where you
Yeah.
go build from the end back.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe let's talk about that for what I'd like to talk about. So is kind of what those blocks are between each of those phases. I mean, for phase one, tell me if I'm wrong here. My estimation for that phase one would be you gotta get marketing, sales, and service delivery down packed. You got to be able to attract people to your business, sell them, and deliver an effective service. And if you can do that consistently, you're gonna get yourself up to the $1 million mark. But if one of those three pillars are terrible, then you're going to consistently, fail. So
Yeah.
the $1 million one is just like you got to learn how to be in business for that first phase, is what I would think.
Well, you're not going to luck into that type of cash flow. Like if
Right.
you're printing $1 million in cash after everything at a year, like that again, like I know that I'm setting that bar really high. If you're sitting here as a newer injector or a new office or a new owner, don't get discouraged by that because it compounds. It's like compound interest. Like it takes
Yeah.
time. It just do the right actions at the moment that you can control to build towards your goal. If your goal is to get to that $1 million of EBITDA, to your point, yes, the sales process is something you're going to need. You also have more than one person working in your practice at that point, right? So hiring,
Right.
firing, staffing, HR, finance, all of those things are important pillars, as you just said, that if you're not set on those pillars as a foundation, you're probably not going to be able to get up to that level. And even if you do, you'll topple when you get there because those are
Mm-hmm.
things where, again, you cannot scale people. You can't just make more of the same person. So, again,
Mm.
to get those processes down that work, it's more or less, I can say that that is what you just keep doing the right things now and it'll pay off later.
Okay. So the person that gets up to 1 million is somebody who probably has learned how to staff, probably has learned pretty well how to market, sell, and then actually deliver good results for people. Like they know how the business stuff works. So once they enter that $1 million in EBITDA, moving forward, um, when they hit that phase two, where they're starting to look at launching locations, they're starting to look at like they're starting to make a lot more money, or maybe they're just expanding their current location to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Which I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Somebody that just wants to build a bigger space versus launching separate buildings of the same brand. Is there are there sales considerations people should make when they're doing things like that? Like, does that impact their ability to get bigger numbers, or is it all just 100% how much money the whole business is making?
I hate to say it's more about, I mean, you can have 15 locations if you're, zero EBITDA, you're not making money. So it's all for nothing.
Mm,
So your valuation comes from your cash flow. And so
mm,
that's what you keep in mind as you scale, as you build, is like that is what you protect. Now, there again, if you think of the business cycle, beginning, middle, and end, if you're in the middle, you're still investing in the business. You're still building processes and you're still probably doing it at a bigger scale. You have people
mm,
who work for you, you can have experts. But when I'm a catalyst at this point, what I would give you is there's four options that you have. Now, you don't have to do one, you can do all four at the same time. It's hard to,
mm,
but four ways I would look at it. If you're at that $1 million, like this is really where I feel like Catalyst's wheelhouse is from getting. It's so hard to go from a B to an A. It's so much harder than going from like a D to a B, right? It's very, very
mm.
hard. It's like you have to change your diet, you have to change your sleep cycle. You have to really get, into it to really get above that. So look at it four ways. You're either going to grow your revenue, right? So you're pushing top line, revenue, revenue, revenue. You could start to scale or add locations. You're looking at an exit, or you're looking at what I call revenue development, something that I like to specialize in, and that is growing a new revenue stream that you don't already have. And I think when you're below $1 million of EBITDA, the challenge is that you're in survival mode. You're working harder. You're just working more hours. You're usually doing it with
Mm.
two or three other key people and you just grinding through it. And I can think of 50 offices that you and I both know who are doing
Yeah.
this and they're doing it well and they're killing it. And they're on stage and they're great. Those are people that are just surviving. They're not really thinking of that next stage, and that's the scale stage. So really at the end of the day, it's really decide what you want. Do you want to drive top line revenue? That means you buy a new laser. You're buying new
Mm-hmm.
things. You're investing in the business. It can be. You can also do something I call vendor management, where you bring
Okay.
someone in like me who can kind of work with you on pricing and how do you get pricing and how do you make it all work and fit and generate revenue for you. So those are
What do you
things that you can
with
do.
with vendor management? What do you think about people selecting a company and sticking with that company to get the best pricing, or do you like them being diverse? Does it matter?
You said like five things there, and I would pause you and say you're summarizing an area that I would say it depends on a lot of things. And all I
Okay.
would tell you on this podcast, not to go too much into it, is make a decision on what you want to do and stick to it. Whatever you
Mhm.
value. If it's pricing, it wasn't for me. At Platinum Dermatology Partners, when we did this, pricing was number three. We made them vote. We had 9 physicians who led our decisions because I didn't want it to be, I'm not a physician. At no point should I be giving someone medical advice, period, right? But I can build a car that you can drive, that you can make those decisions as a company together, right? So I wanted to get
Mhm.
everybody together. They voted on 5 different pillars. One was the product portfolio. So think of Sculpture is a great example of something in a
Versatility.
portfolio
Yeah.
that you really
Mhm.
want versus something that
Yeah.
has a single use product. So portfolio was number one at our scale. Now it doesn't have to be for everybody. That was ours. Our second one was research. How much research was done on these products? And we reviewed the research together as a group. 3 was pricing. So pricing was third. So when you said your example of, what can you do one company for pricing, it really depends, and I'd have to work with each individual office on their own particular vendor management plan, simply because you
Yeah.
start off with zero leverage and you end with all the leverage. And I've watched and worked at every level of those from the beginning to the end. So the point
Mhm.
is that vendor management, it depends. And I would say Chris at Catalyst Aesthetic Advisors could probably reach out and I would help you with it. But
That's huge. So when people are, because most times when people are picking their vendors, there's a bunch of sub points in their head that they don't recognize, and there's one big point where they just think, "What's the price I can get on things?" And so they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to go with whatever so and so because they're giving me the lowest price." But there's so many other value adds that you get from a company. You get the company culture. So sometimes like you're getting a rep that's taking good care of you. You're getting marketing support in a lot of cases too, where they're giving you assets and giving you things that are you're getting a portfolio of products that you get access. Like I think there's a lot of things that people probably aren't
you didn't say
considering.
the most
Most
important
just
one.
think price.
You haven't even said the most important one, the one that we did not solve for in those 5 examples. And you think about who's sitting here talking is the rep. And I was a rep.
100%.
And the rep,
100%.
as well as, and every person in this listening is going to nod their head and say, yep. You think of a rep that you cannot lose in your practice. You'll buy,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is why the UPS driver does not sell rest. This is why
Yeah.
you have someone with that business acumen that comes in. And the easiest thing for me to point to is what's valuable about a rep is the benchmarks. They
Yep.
know what good looks like from other practices. They know what pricing is in your area. They bring so much skill to your practice. That is something that usually rules portfolios. A lot of times
Yeah.
when I hear someone simply say, I hate X company, usually what
Yeah.
they mean is they hate the rep, right? That
Yeah.
represents that company is who they hate. And that's because the rep hasn't called them back. But it's probably because you haven't bought a product from them in your career. So there's a lot of
It's
why,
true.
right?
Yeah,
But
that's true.
and the relationship must be respected because it plays such a role in vendor management.
That's so
I don't
cool. I think
have,
that's so huge. Yeah.
that's why I removed it. When we did the
Mm-hmm.
platinum dermatology, we had to remove it. Like I have so many friends at so many companies that probably
Of course.
despise me because we could not carry 6 neurotoxins because at our
Mm-hmm.
scale that made no sense to do that. So
No.
that's where you go, there's decisions to be made and just be honest and upfront with the reps and they understand it. They'll go somewhere else to spend their time and energy, which is
Right.
their currency. So it's not personal, but the rep and kind of understanding that they're going to call you the last week of a quarter and the last day of a month, and they're going to put that product on your shelf. That product on your shelf, sometimes without it being planned, isn't really good for your business, right? And that's where you
Right.
go, hey, if you had a plan and you aligned your partnership 2 ways with a company and a vendor, or 3, I would say 2 or 3 makes most sense.
Mm-hmm.
You get more. You get more trainings. You get more samples. You get more things
Yeah.
because you're actually partnering with them. And that's the key.
Correct. I mean, when I worked with Shino Bay Aguilera down in South Florida, for anybody
Where we
listening,
met,
if you don't
by
know,
the way.
yeah,
That's when
which
we
is
met.
how we met in the
That's how
first
we
place. Yeah. So when I was working with Shino, we had weekly meetings that were staff meetings, and reps would come into those all the time and teach us about their product lines. Or when we would have events, reps were coming and helping. They were helping with products sometimes, or they were doing seminars with the guests, and people were fired up that there was a Galderma rep talking directly about the product. They were like, "We get somebody from the company to talk about what?" Like the patients were fired up. So when you can get a good rep and consistently if a rep left a company
Yep,
and they
watch what happens.
joined a new one it was highly likely we were going to buy from that rep because we already liked them. It's like, yeah, whatever you're selling, if it's a good product, we could do good like it's obviously something we do want to carry. Then yeah, if we love the rep. So I think you're bang on. So maybe to summarize that whole little chapter there for everybody listening is that you should identify the things that matter to you in partnering, like the things that matter to you in partnering with your product lines and your vendors. And it is not always purely pricing. Pricing obviously is going to be a factor for everybody, but it's not always purely pricing, because it could even be things like somebody wants to start a career as kind of a key opinion leader and an educator, and they
Right.
want to build more relationship with certain companies because they want their foot in the door. And it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
So
there's so many
when
things with vendor management. And again, having a third party or having somebody that kind of has seen, like, I almost think of I love thinking of myself as an agency. Like,
Mhm.
I know what pricing is on one side and I know what the levels are on the other. And so just knowing those two things alone,
Yeah.
that's a really strong, like, kind of one of one thing that you can make sure that, okay, we're going to split this up this way and we're going to get the most out of our spend. Doesn't matter what level you're at. And that's really hard to do because most reps don't have their other competitors' pricing offhand.
Yeah.
So a lot of that pricing stuff can be a third or fourth consideration. But just stick to it, right? Think of the end. You're trying to grow your revenue. Be disciplined with your decision making because it'll
So
affect your revenue.
when somebody is trying to scale up through that second phase, they're trying to get to 1 to 3 locations, they're trying to hit that 3 million in EBITDA. What are the most common things that you're typically seeing them struggle with, where you're like, oh my gosh, like a clock, they're always going to have this problem for sure, or whatever? What things that you're seeing as commonalities?
Bigger problems. Personnel. I think at those levels, when you start to get above 5, like I think of an example of a company. I'm actually going to use it by name because I think so much of them. But CPP is a great example. There's a difference
Mm-hmm.
here because they've started with a purpose, and they've done this before in another country, Canada. But they got 3 very key physicians to be in a leadership position, and they built from 1 to 50. So they bought practices, and they were very disciplined with, okay, these practices have our values. They want to come into the system. Integration is the word. To answer your question, the way they struggle is integrating each office into one group. So if you build from
Mm-hmm.
1 to 50, you can usually do that through being disciplined and keeping the end in mind. And so you're building out and you're saying, I don't want to do this. If you assemble a lot of different smaller companies into one company, there is no company identity. You have to build that.
Yeah.
That's a culture thing.
Yeah.
And right. So culture usually means we want to make you happy. So you make different decisions. The integration. So I'm just going to be clear. If you're selling your
Mm-hmm.
practice or you're thinking of selling your practice and you're in this middle area, if they tell you, and they being anyone who walks in your door to buy your practice, if they come in and say nothing will change, run away,
Mm.
because you don't want that. You might say,
Yeah.
that sounds perfect. And I hear it all the time. I've advised people for more than a decade and selling practices. And they always say the same thing. I don't want anything to change. The fact is, when I went to platinum, what I realized is it has to change. Otherwise,
Correct.
you're left with 17 different systems. I keep using that number. 17 different systems that don't talk to each other. I can't tell you what my Botox price is in California. That's a problem, right? So
Mm.
integration and getting everybody on a solid foundation and build out from there, that's what
Mm.
kept. And so when you look at an example of a group that has done that over the course of this last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I mean, time's moving
Mm.
so quick, it might be longer than that. I just look at that
Yeah.
and say, like, in that area, be on the same page and only work with people who have like-minded values and goals. Otherwise, you're going to be lumped in with people who may have different goals and values that conflict. And then you have a real problem because you're not integrating. And if you have some people
Right.
doing one-offs, guess what happens? Their Botox doesn't come in, they cancel patients, they lose revenue. Lose revenue,
Right.
that people quit. People quit, you're left with a building that's empty. And that's the integration
So
difficult.
there's so for a lot of people who have multi locations, they're kind of like what they're kind of a lot of them are kind of letting them kind of run themselves essentially. Like they're not fully on the same exact page with a larger system that they've
Most
built
of
for
the ones
themselves.
I'm seeing, yeah, you're seeing people
Mm,
who, they've added ad hoc, right? They're just adding, where the
mm,
integration. And I think if you buy too many practices as a company and you don't have an integration plan, you don't know how to bring those people in. Because I want to be another thing very clearly here. I don't think anything's better or worse, but aesthetics and cash business is different than other
mm,
specialties. So when someone comes from another specialty, you think of altitudes, right? 30,000 foot view is the board level, and that's the executive level, the senior level, whatever you want to say. They speak a language that you can get away with being from, let's say, ophthalmology. You can get away with that at 30,000 foot view because you're running a business. There's
mm,
offices, multi
right.
locations, multi states. You understand the game. At the 10-foot view, that is a disaster because they don't understand. It's not the same thing, right? So I give you a great example, very easy. The difference between an injectable and skincare is night and day. Putting
Mm,
inventory on your shelf for one or the other is a make or break decision because of demand. And we can get into strategy some other time. But what I'm telling you is that at the 30,000 foot view, it's all inventory. It doesn't matter if it's skincare or injectables.
doesn't
They're
matter
two
what it
very
is, right?
different things. One will
Hmm.
sell no matter what. Like when the last time you returned a sculpture vial? Good luck with that. You're not
Right,
doing it,
right.
right? You're going to sell it. Skincare, it doesn't sell itself. You need a whole nother sales process to do that. So
Yeah.
it's not as guaranteed. My point is that at the 10-foot view and the 30,000 foot view, what you really need is somebody at the 20,000 foot view that speaks 30 and 10. So the companies that are coming in and talking to you, if they're from this space and they speak our language, they know what an
Hmm.
energy-based device is, right? They know what,
Yeah.
a Botox unit from Dysport's 300 to 100. Like those are things where you go, that's our language. So
Yeah.
make sure that you're integrating with people, and when you're really kind of making decisions on programs and EMR systems, that they fit your needs in aesthetics and not necessarily coming from the outside that doesn't deal with what we do. So it's not better or worse, just different. So
Yeah. 100%. So when they're in that middle phase, typically when they're in the middle phase trying to get into that final phase, they're typically struggling with how do I build a larger system that works? How do I take a 30,000 foot view and build this thing like a corporation while still remain keeping the 10,000 foot view and having solid relationships and keeping the culture in each location. So that's huge. I think I would assume biggest things they can do there is just like have the bigger plan in place. So don't just willy-nilly launch another location because you had 5 patients that said, "Oh my gosh, I just wish you were in this one city that's
there's a
two block,
smoking
two
deal on
blocks
a
away from
building.
me."
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
smoking deal on a building. I mean, that's not the way to do it. Like that, like, beginning, middle, and end of the cycle. It might be in that certain way of your business and investment wise, but
build a
integration
plan.
and being consistent across locations takes more than just systems. That takes
Yeah.
people too, and you've got to make their
Hmm.
jobs enjoyable because there's a lot of options. They can go anywhere and they can do anything. And so a lot of times you systems you try to switch to a system that doesn't really work for somebody, and you don't realize that it's taking cash off of this system and not to this one, so it's making it hard. That person quits. Now you
Yeah.
have a real problem. You have a system that nobody knows how to use that doesn't fit what you're doing, and someone inexperienced at the lowest point of entry into your practice probably paid the least, is what I mean. And
What
that's just fact. That
what
those
about the
people make or break you, right? So you have to make sure that your people are on board with you. That's why
yeah?
integration is important. Otherwise, the
What
job
do you
sucks.
what do you think about the provider-led business? Like what's the transition for somebody who is the primary income driver does that person eventually need to get out of that seat and replace themselves and be the CEO, be the director, or does that person hire a CEO when they're at 3 locations plus, or they're at maybe 3 million in EBITDA plus? Do they hire a CEO to say, hey, you're in charge of this whole thing. I'm gonna go keep slinging syringes and making money for us, but you're gonna manage the business side. What do you think for those people? Should they hire an ops person or a CEO?
I mean, if you're above $1 million, even out to three, I think you probably already have someone running the business. Like if you're doing
Probably
it
have a
as a
practice
single
manager. Yeah.
injector, single owner, you're an elite class where you go like
Yeah.
you have something else going on. You have a YouTube channel or you've created a skincare line. You have some other income because yeah, you're going to need to have somebody with someone to run the business. But again,
Yeah.
I would go back to my original question at the beginning. What's your goal? When you're
What are you
at
trying to
3
do?
million, what do you want to do? Like, you have to make those
Mm-hmm.
decisions. Like, what do you want to sell? Do you not want to sell? Do you want to stay? Do you want, there's so many different considerations. And that's really the answer to your question. Like, should the physician step back? I went to dinner with a physician last night who's tired. He's 59 years old. He
Yeah.
wants to go, he wants to do less, but he wants to keep making money. And you're like, what's your succession plan? And he doesn't have one. So he's
Yeah.
retained me to go and find him somebody to succeed him. And that's because I'm telling him, if you're going to sell, you don't have anybody behind you, you're not going to be able to get a good multiple, because they don't see that $5 coming back when they have to go find someone to plug in your place when you ultimately slow down. So
Yeah.
the jig is up on, like, just being able to sell a practice. Like, those days where someone could just sell a practice with, there's been enough time now in consolidation where you really have to have a good exit strategy and a good launch plan for your next phase. It's funny, you know what you get when you sell a business like that, right? When you're selling businesses that valuable, you know what you get? A tombstone. When Revision was sold, I got a tombstone. The tombstone is because that business is dead and a new one builds, and a new one rises. And that's another finance nerd term, like EBITDA. The tombstone is something I didn't know about until Revision, and now I have one. I'm like so proud of it.
That's awesome. I killed the old one and now they've got the new one.
It's really nice. It's beautiful. They make you, I mean, it's
awesome.
a real thing, and a guy that had been through
It's
the
a
process.
legit tombstone. You get an actual tombstone when that happens.
Yes. It's all, it's funny. Like this,
That's fun.
One of the guys, it's funny because as you go through the private equity world, like the more you do it, the better you get at it. I was with a guy that had done it 3 times, Bob Ingersoll, great guy. And he was like, yeah, man, we got to get our tombstone. Like, what's that? You know what I mean? Like, what is that? So it was funny, but
that's fun. So maybe you would say to that person who is the provider, the primary provider, who is tired, the one who's like, I'm sick of this. That person, it's like, hey, do it sooner than later. Like, start the plan. Like, if you're already tired of it now, start to search for somebody to replace you. Like, it's not just you're not gonna magically get bought.
It might not always be one, right? When you're talking that scale, when you're getting into trying to build at 5 or more locations, we're not talking about, I want to go hire somebody. Like, that's where you look at it and you go, you have a training academy and you're producing your own talent. And I think of an example of somebody, I think revolutionary, who's bringing people in from a college, right? So Amy and Cheryl are bringing people in as they're basically bringing.
I love that they do this. I love that they do this.
And they're mentoring people in nursing programs at Drexel, which is a great school in Philadelphia. You look at that and you say, like, that's brilliant. You realize that? Like, you're farming talent. You're farming talent. And that's where you go, like, you start building cool things like that. And that's where my revenue development number 4 thing I can do for you. That's really where those things come. I've seen some really cool ways to do things, not just money focused. Like, that's not money focused. They don't make any money on that.
No. Well, there's other cool ways too. Like, I'll call Jamie York out on this. Jamie York, when she's helping, she's building her own clinic right now. And I was asking her, I was like, how's it going? She was like, Jared, because she's used to being at Lace, where, insanely massive business, and they've always got cash reserves and it's not her money. Like, when she helped build a Lace, it's like, oh, it's a sexy thing that she could build. Now she's at a 3-door, 3 treatment room clinic that she's investing her own money into. And she's like, Jared, this is way harder than I thought. I said, yeah, buckle up. You're in small business mode, baby. So, but one thing she's doing that I think is,
because Jamie's game business. So we got to shout out to game business and whip them. But more than that, think about what you just said. Think about how hard that is mentally. And this is something for someone scaling at this point. When you build a new practice and you say, it's not going so well, you've got to remember, keep your perspective. Jamie was at a 45-degree angle, almost to a 90-degree angle with growth, right? So whenever you start over, again, beginning, middle, and end of the business cycle, you're actually starting here. Your mind is here, flat, right? You're like, this was great when I had a team of 10 reps that did all the work for me. Now I'm writing my own emails, right? So I'm sitting here going, like, you have to readjust and recalibrate your trajectory, because Jamie's finding that out, right?
Yeah. And so I had asked her, I was like, so how's it going? What are you doing? Like, how many providers do you have? She goes, she said, like, I have 12. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, I recruit from the local hospital and I give them a day a week that they get. And then as the cream rises to the top and people start booking more and more and more, then that person gets a second day and a third and a fourth, and then they get a full-time offer. But the benefit of it is, I'm looking at talent all the time to see who I want to rise to the top, and we're building cool company culture where it's like there's lots of people constantly moving in and out, and it just makes us feel alive and exciting, and our patients love it and our team members love it, and it makes us feel strong. Which I thought was brilliant, because it's a great way to like recruit talent, and it, rather than just, a lot of these clinics, they're like looking for the one injector that's going to save their whole business. And I don't know, I think that injector is doomed to either take their business and run at some point, or worse, take over the whole thing and hijack it and hijack your culture.
Such a good point. Like, I think about, like, we have these people that we manufacture in our conversations that don't exist. The nurse injector with a book of business. You know what that's called? A business owner. Like, a
competitor. Yeah, exactly.
Their own practice. It's the other one is, like, whenever I'd go into an office and they'd say, we need to hire a salesperson. We'll go to the mall and get the person that sells makeup in the mall. That person's not a basic salesperson. You know how hard that job is? Like, you're underestimating that person's skill and set and their interest in kind of what you're selling. So there's these mythical creatures that we all kind of fantasize about. There is no single injector, even a dermatologist single injector, that's going to save your business. Period.
No, and you don't want that, because you're hinging everything on them. It's all
on person, not the process, right? Not the people. The people matter more than anything. But if you don't have good processes, they're not going to stay anyway. So it is one of those things where you have to have good processes.
100%. Okay, so now to kind of put a bow on this whole thing, you said there was 4 things. You said revenue. You said the 4 things is growing revenue, scale and locations, and then what was the third one?
Exit. If you're looking to exit or even thought about it. Now I hesitate to even throw that as an option, because I usually do that kind of quietly, because people don't. It's almost like sometimes they don't want people to know, or they're not sure yet. And so don't let that scare you off. I mean, the planning for it. Just simple things you can do to plan ahead without really having to go to a broker yet. And if you need a broker, I know those too. That's a lot of the concept of Catalyst, is who we know.
So now, so we're talking about these 3 phases of business. We have the beginning phase, the middle phase, and the end phase. What it feels like is that from what you said, those 4 things are kind of the products that Catalyst, that you've built this amazing agency, consultancy, advisory, talent agency, whatever anybody, however anybody wants to put you in their mental box. But ultimately, you have those 4 things. Is if somebody's trying to go from 2 to 3, and they're trying to go from 1 to, they're hitting that 3 million in EBITDA, or they're trying to go from 2 locations to 3 locations, or 3 to 5. Those levers that you can help them turn are going to be helping them scale their revenue, so they can actually get enough money to either buy those locations or continue scaling, as well as work on what the actual 30,000 foot view looks like from each location. If they're trying to exit, they should be planning it there in the middle phase. They should be planning it in the beginning phase. If you're trying to exit, you should know what you're shooting for from the get-go, because if you do, it's very easy to plan your timelines and your scale plan. You're going to rewrite the plan over and over, but at least gives you like a flow. And then revenue development, talk to me about for a second. Revenue development, essentially it's you helping them install new revenue lines. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's just, it's a catch-all, because it's the fun one. It's when I say the 4th, and that's where people hesitate and they go, well, I want to talk about that. So you alluded to it in my introduction. Like, I've had an opportunity to build a lot of different things in the business, specifically, like, for instance, I worked in manufacturing with high-end skincare, and I don't just mean private label, I mean like brands. And so you look at it and you say, like, could someone launch a private label? I could help you with that. Do you want to launch an e-commerce channel? I can help you with that. There's so many of those cool ideas. And what I mean by revenue development is important, because if you think about, if you're in the 1 to 3 or the 1 to 5, you're surviving, you're fighting every day. You don't have the time, the bandwidth, or even the resources to be able to build a new revenue stream. It's a great idea. What's your big idea? What's your big want? Oh, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to build this. I have extensive experience. And when I'll tell you, when I say I'm a talent agency, Catalyst Aesthetic Advisors, I am extremely comfortable with not knowing myself how to do something, because I'm overly confident in the fact that I know someone that does. So if I don't know how to do something, I can assess, diagnose, and refer someone to you to help you build that and stay along to project manage it if needed, depending on the size. So really cool pitches that are coming to me. This is where the industry is really reaching out to. I'm getting a lot of, could you launch this go-to-market strategy for this new injectable that's coming? Like I've had some really cool ideas come across, and just a matter of picking the right ones. But revenue development's the fun stuff. It's literally building new revenue streams, like the Elite Retreat. You were there, to see, we built this loyalty program that was a really cool meeting, and a lot of the ideas that came from it changed the game. I mean, we had ChatGPT was not even a company when we had AI presented by Justin Harper at the first Elite Retreat. Like you think about think about that.
I
right?
remember
ChatGPT didn't even exist, and we were talking about AI. I had no idea what that guy was talking about, but he was doing the prompts on the screen on the Elite Retreat, and we sold almost $1 million in a day of skincare because people wanted to get into those ideas. So like having this agency and resources and a network that I can find the answer to just about anything you could dream doing, I think is the fun part of Catalyst.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I've seen you do it.
You have
dozens of times.
I've seen it in action. Ideas. We didn't want to do that.
I've seen it in action dozens and dozens of times. And to go back full circle, you're always right. Like your instincts, if somebody declines it, I've only ever seen it bite them in the butt or them try whatever the thing is later. So I think your instincts are always bang on because you know how to distill things down to, okay, here's what actually matters, and that's what's important is
you can't
identifying the fulcrums.
Like I can't fake the repetition of walking in. I mean, I estimate between 5,000 and 8,000 different practices in 47 states. Like that's me walking in, and the repetition of that over and over and over, you start to recognize these good ideas, and then you cross pollinate. It's like a rep coming into your office in a local area, but talk about the whole country. And that's where like you can find these ideas in places that you would never know are extremely good at aesthetics. Like El Paso, Texas is a great example. Fargo, North Dakota is another one. Like Bentonville, Arkansas. Go to Bentonville and tell me you're a better practice than me. You're not. I promise you.
They're killer out there. I agree. Bentonville, Arkansas, or even I did a gain business in San Antonio recently, and I was like, I didn't know San Antonio was this poppin'. You guys are crushing.
Yeah, and then you take what you just saw in San Antonio, when you go to Boston, right? And someone in Boston might just need this one little catalyst, right? This little additive, and boom, it hits. And that's what this agency really is.
I think that's awesome. And I am so grateful that we had this conversation because now I've got more tools in my tool belt to be able to advise and help clinics, and hopefully everybody that's listening, you're able to get some things for yourself, whether you're in that first phase and you're just thinking, okay, how do I even scale my business? I think the biggest lesson phase one is just get a plan together. Think of what you want that end goal to be. If you're in that phase two, same deal. You should have that end goal in mind. But take from what we were talking about how to pull the right levers to get up to that 1, 3, 4, 5 locations so that you can start considering what the final phase of your business is going to be. So if people want to get in touch with you, Chris, they're going to catalystaestheticadvisors.com, right?
That's right.
What's your email address?
Chris at Catalyst Aesthetic Advisor. I'm the founder and lead member right now. Right now, my vision is to get to an agency level similar to CAA in California with just basically you come to me for a result. All you come to me is say, I want to grow my revenue. I want to exit. Cool. I want to add a location. I want some revenue development. And I bring you a solution. It's that simple. And so the agency part is it doesn't always have to be me. I can go out and outsource people because I have a really good Rolodex that you now have access to when you reach out to Chris at Catalyst Aesthetic Advisors.
That's awesome. Well, if you're in that phase two, even if you don't fully know where you're like, I don't really know how to grow, that's worth a conversation. That's worth saying, if you're hitting that $1 million in EBITDA plus, or you're hitting up towards that 3 million, that's worth a conversation to send an email and say, hey, Chris, I don't even know where my gap is. Can we talk about where I'm struggling so that we can build a plan together? I definitely think it's worth it. I can't tell you how many times, especially even for me as an agency, that the biggest blessing that I ever got was just having a conversation and telling someone, I don't actually know where my problem. It's Mark Twain said, it's not what you don't know that kills you. It's what you think you know that just ain't so, so you need that third party to evaluate what's going on with you. So
you need benchmarks. You need
that third party, correct, to compare you to what's
are hard
successful.
To get in this industry. Like Jared, I'd ask you, as an aesthetic industry, think of the 30,000 foot view. Where do you think we are in the business cycle? Aesthetics.
Aesthetics.
Beginning, middle, and end.
We're entering the middle. Like I don't think aesthetics is anywhere. I mean, I did a podcast last week and we talked about K beauty, and I was talking about what the differences are. He goes, it is cultural. It's household level in Korea, where it's like every single it's unheard of that you aren't doing things, you know, and here the adoption in the States is still not at that level. So I think aesthetics is I think infancy is probably an underestimation of it, but I do think that it's like, I think that it's not even close to maturity yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I look at parallel industries. The way I always look at things is I think of Chicago restaurants, right? It is really hard to beat Chicago restaurants, but they're still Chicago restaurants. So meaning someone's doing it, right? It just takes a lot more to do it. And I think of a story, I think of how I think of the industry, where we are, because I think there's a lot of naysayers and there's a lot of doom and gloom, and we're going in a different. Stop that. We're actually not. We're okay. And I'll illustrate really quickly by telling you a story about 1990s catfishing, right? So in the state of Alabama in the 1990s, there was a farmer who decided to flood his fields instead of planting his crops and start to raise catfish. That man got $10 a pound. The next time he went to church, he had a brand new truck, chrome rims, nice trailer hitch, looked great, right? The neighbors the next year, they all saw his example and they went and flooded their fields. And the year after that, the county flooded their fields. The year after that, the state flooded their fields and corporate started to work in. And by the end of that cycle, they were getting about $3 a pound. So you're in the beginning of that cycle and you're at $10 a pound, you're in early at the beginning, that's great. The point is that there's still growth. There's just more entrance to the market. There's now 6 neurotoxins. Every company in the world is launching a skincare company, and most products are coming into the US. Why? Because we're still growing at either high double digits or double digits, or high single digits, low double digits. We're still growing. So a lot of times you hear people say, well, the economy's bad, or we're there's this lawsuit, or we're not doing well. The industry's still growing. That's so obvious when you see all the investment coming in. You just have to be better at it. You have to be more efficient at it. You have to be better at the processes. So $3 a pound still pays your bills because you're still
correct
$3 a pound. So we're not in the end, not doom and gloom. I actually think the opposite to your point. There's so many more people that haven't done aesthetic treatments than there is people that have. So we've got a lot of runway to go.
Yeah, not to mention the wellness industry that is now being grafted onto it. Holy smokes.
It's
and that is truly its infancy. That is truly like just a barely blooming, seed.
What's coming is crazy.
So I just think there's so much more room, for all of us, which is thrilling. So well, Chris, I'm really grateful that you took this time. I'm really grateful that I'm really grateful just to be your friend. Honestly, I think I've learned so much from you, and from your belief in me. I've grown so much, and even the connections you've made for me. I'm just grateful. So I'm really excited for Catalyst, and I cannot advocate enough for what you all are doing. And I personally know people, and I'm seeing results of people that you are, taking your clients, and seeing what you're doing for people, and it's just so cool. So I know that this thing is going to continue to scale and grow. So anybody in here, I can't advocate enough to send an email to chris@aestheticadvisors.com, especially if you're trying to hit that scale but just can't do it yet. So thank you everybody for listening to The Patient Magnet today. If you disagreed with anything we said today, we'd love to fight you in the comments. Get down there and send something. Or if you agreed with it and want to stroke our egos, we'd love to hear that too. If you've got somebody who you think is struggling with growing their aesthetic clinic, send this podcast over to them, and do not forget to subscribe. Thank you, everybody.